is public information for MRC volunteers. I'm going to hand it over to our state MRC coordinator, Mike Magner, to make the introductions. Mike.
Thank you, Kate. As Kate mentioned, I'm Mike Magner. I'm the state volunteer coordinator for the MRC program in Virginia. And I want to say thank you to all the volunteers, not just for being here tonight to learn this new information, but also for the great things that you guys do as volunteers every week of the year. We've got MRC volunteers deployed almost every day around the state on a given year, putting out thousands and thousands of volunteer hours. And really excited. Next week is National Volunteer Week. You will hear a special proclamation from our commissioner will be sent out to you to thank you for your service. And it's going to provide a quick summary of what we accomplished in 2024 as well. And so without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. Tonight we have two speakers from the Virginia Department of Health. We have Brookie Crawford, who is currently serving as our Risk Communications Manager and also doubling or tripling, I should say, as the North and Northwest Region Public Information Officer for the Virginia Department of Health as well. She has more than 25 years of communications experience, and previously she served as the Risk Communications Strategic Policy Specialist at the Virginia Department of Emergency Management for 17 years. Linda Scarborough joined VDH in 2021 after spending more than 20 years as a communications professional for several businesses, organizations, and Virginia public school systems. She has extensive experience in healthcare after working for the largest private healthcare provider in the world, in addition to serving as a health and environmental reporter for several television stations throughout the United States. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Brookie and Linda.
Thank you, Mike. First, I just want to say thank you to all of you out there, because I know what the tremendous job you guys do, and that we wouldn't be able to do a lot of these things that we are able to do without your help. Linda worked with many of you during the Southwest, the Hurricane Helene, and then the Southwest flooding we just had in February. And it was the volunteers of MRC that really helped during those events. And so please give yourself a round of applause, because you do excellent work. Linda, if you want to, there she goes. Linda is going to be helping me in the background. She can answer some questions in the chat as I go along, and she'll keep me on the straight and narrow. That's what she does for me. So we're going to talk about media spokesperson. This is just an overview. This isn't our actual training. And I encourage you that before you ever speak to the media, that you actually take our spokesperson training. It has an exercise in it, and we aren't able to do that with this many people, which is why we're not able to do it today. But you'll see some of these concepts, but this gives us a little more time to chat and go on. So next slide. And this is just basically what I just said, the purpose of this. Next slide. Okay, so a spokesperson is someone that talks to the media, and you have two main roles. The first is to share VDH's message, and that's prevention, preparedness, awareness. Those are just our everyday type things. And then second is to control the narrative. And that's when we have disasters, emergencies, controversial issues, and counter information. Counter misinformation, which we found that we have a lot. There are several ways that we can get out information. The first is community meetings and town halls. That's a great way to share. The second is through social media, and that is handled by our comms department. The third is going to be our blog and our website, and we put out information on there all the time. Next one is a news release. And that's where we write out something and send it out. We have a news conference, and that's when we're trying to get a lot of information out to the same information out to multiple people at the same time. And then lastly, our media interviews, and that's what we're going to focus on today.
Shout Factory TV.
And here's a little sample of a media interview.
Good morning, Dr. Hartford. Thank you for coming. I hope it's not too early for you.
No, I had to get up to be on television.
Well, I'm glad you relaxed. I'm a little nervous myself. I mean, I've never interviewed a psychologist.
Don't worry about it. If you get in trouble, just turn it over to me and I'll wing it.
10 seconds Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, Augie.
You'll be fine.
Here goes.
3, 2, you're on.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock, and I'm Ruth Corley. My first guest is psychologist Dr. Robert Hartley. It's been said that today's psychologist is nothing more than a con man, a snake oil salesman, flim-flamming innocent people, peddling cures for everything from nail biting to a lousy love life. And I agree. We'll ask Dr. Hartley to defend himself after this message.
Was that on the air?
Oh, that's just what we call a grabber. You know, it keeps the audiences from tuning out.
We won't be doing any more grabbing, will we?
No. From now on, we'll just talk.
3, 2, you're on.
Dr. Hartley, according to a recently published survey, the average fee for a private session with a psychologist is $40.
That's about right.
Right? I don't think it's right. What other practitioner gets $40 an hour?
My plumber.
Plumbers guarantee their work. Do you?
See, I don't understand why all of a sudden you...
Guarantee your work.
Well, I can't guarantee that each and every person who walks through the doors is going to be cured, you know?
You mean you ask $40 an hour and you guarantee nothing?
I validate.
All right. So that's an example of what we don't want to happen when we talk to the media. Everybody's a little bit afraid. I'm always afraid that that's
Shout
what's gonna
Factory
happen.
TV, changing the channel.
There we go. And the key here is that you got to be prepared. So obviously Newhart wasn't prepared. He had no idea what they were going to talk about. He had no idea what kind of reporter this was. He wasn't aware of how the interview was going to run, like he didn't understand the grabber kind of thing. So we want to make sure that everybody's prepared before they talk to the media. So many of you will be working in the field as you're volunteering during disasters and things like that. And you have every chance of a reporter just walking up to you and wanting to talk to you. I highly encourage you not to do that because you were there doing another job and you're not in the right state of mind to start talking to the media. You're not prepared for it. So what I suggest you do is say, thank you very much. Let me get your name and number and I will have my PIO get back with you and we'll get the right person to talk to you. It might end up being you are the right person, but we'll then set up an interview time when you are more prepared for it and your mind isn't on the other tasks that you are doing. If the media should just reach out to you in any shape or form, we ask that you first contact the PIO in the local health district that you're working at. If you don't have one in that health district, then you would contact the regional one. And that would be like me in the North and Northwest and Linda in the Western region. We have Stephanie in the Eastern region and we have Brian Little in the Central region. And all of our names and contact information are on the BDH webpage in the newsroom. And then we'd like you to notify your supervisor, whoever your main contact is at the local health district, because we don't want anybody speaking for the health district without them knowing about it. And we encourage this for even our paid employees. You don't talk to the media unless your PIO knows about it and your supervisor knows about it. And then they'll actually determine who the right person is. And sometimes that's you and sometimes it's somebody else. And then we want you to be prepared before you talk to it. That means being accessible, responding promptly, and coordinating your messages. So we have 35 health districts, and it's very important that all 35 health districts are on the same page and that they're also on the same page with central office. And sometimes we're like in a disaster, we're also coordinating with VDEM and sometimes behavioral health or the Department of Environmental Qualities. So it's very important that we're sharing that message and that we're all on the same page. It would be a really bad idea if we said something If Linda says one thing and I say something different, and the guy at DEQ says something different, and somebody over at behavioral health says something different, the reporter is going to be like, I don't even know what the right story is here. So it's very important that we are all on the same page. Next slide. And so one of the reasons why we want you to contact your PIO is because they're your first line of defense or support. They're going to know whether you're the actual right person, or if we have subject matter experts that are better at coming up with an interview. We share all the time. We regularly meet, and Linda will get a call and she'll say, okay, I've got a media inquiry about this. Do you know who's the subject matter expert? Or I might have a different one. And Linda will say, oh no, I know so-and-so's great at talking to the reporter on that. We're also used to these reporters. We deal with them on an everyday basis. So we have an idea of what their agenda is. Are they a regular beat reporter that's just trying to follow their story? Is it an investigative reporter that's going to be drilling down? Are they going to ask you about multiple things? We can also help them focus their story. So is this, sometimes they just come up with an idea in the newsroom. They've seen somebody else cover it. It's a national story and they're kind of trying to bring it down to the local level, and they don't always know all the background. So we can provide some of that so that your time spent with them is actually about the meat of the story and not a bunch of background stuff. We're also trained to look at the big picture. So we are knowing if it's going to be a controversial issue, if it's something that the governor's office has a certain view that they want for us to handle, or anything like that. And we're also coordinating those messages to make sure that they're consistent. So we're going to talk about the different types of interviews. The first one is a Zoom interview. These became very popular during COVID. And a lot of reporters will still do that. And that means you can be anywhere and do the interview. However, we are starting to see some pushback on that, and they really want some in-person kind of things. The next one is going to be on camera, and those can be live or recorded. So they'll record it and then they'll go back to the studio and do some editing and then show it on air. We have phone, and that can either be a newspaper reporter or sometimes radio will do that on the phone, and they'll call you. You can go into a radio station and do a live or recorded. Social media is another one that's become real popular, and they can do social media live, or they can record it and show it later on social media. And then we have news conference and satellite media tours. Those are usually for our department heads and satellite media. Our subject matter experts. This is Dr. Furlano doing one on the flu, I believe. So like even I don't do satellite media tours, but your PIO can help set those up if someone actually needs that. Next slide. So there are several things you need to consider when you're doing an interview. Key messages, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Your wardrobe. Again, this is another reason why not to do it in the field. I don't know about you, but I've worked some disasters and I'm all hot and sweaty and I'm tired and I look like I, have been working 12 hours because I've been working 12 hours. So, you can have a chance to freshen up before we set up an interview. Wardrobe, it does not mean, let me get the words out. It does not mean you need to be wearing a suit and a tie or formal dress. It just needs to be that you are representing VDM. Sorry, you're representing VDH. So you want to look like that. So if you're in the field though, it can be polo. I think you guys have Medical Reserve Corps shirts. That's fine. You just want to be, neat and tidy. You don't want to be wearing your Taylor Swift shirt or something with a message on it that's not appropriate for representing VDH. You also want to think about your background, and this works both virtually or in person. You want to think about sounds that are in the background. You don't want to do an interview if the trash truck is driving by, or you don't want to do one on the street if there's people that can come and walk by you, because people see a camera and then they do really weird things, behind you. So you don't want to do that. So you want to think about where the background is and what kind of sounds are there. I have a friend at the lottery who told a story about they go and give out checks at the different places where there are winners. And so they were at this grocery store, and the grocery store manager decided where they were going to do the little presentation with the media, and they didn't actually clock where they were. And so they're out there giving this check, and behind them are a row of incontinence products. So you really want to think about that. That's not really what you want in the back of the Virginia lottery kind of thing. If you were doing them in the house or in an office and you have a ceiling fan, you want to turn those off because those can be distracting. Something going zoom by you. Lighting too, you want to make sure that you are they can see you in your visual, and you're not all dark and gloomy like you're a secret person or something like that. Sound quality, again, you want to make sure that they can hear you and it comes across. You have a good connection if it's online. But most importantly, you just need to remember that you're representing VDH and you're representing VDH's message. And last, anytime you're talking to a reporter, even if it's the part where they say, hey, can I interview you? Everything you say to the reporter is on the record. So you start an interview and they're like, oh, hi, how's the weather? And, they make small talk, but everything that you say to a reporter can be on the record. Our colleague used to be a reporter, and she tells a story about how she was working as a reporter, and she'd done an interview with someone and they told her something off the record, and she did not intend on using it, but she was back in the newsroom, and she's filing her story, and her editor asked her something, and she said that they had told her this fact, but it was off the record, and the editor was like, no, we're using that. So anything you say to a reporter is on the record. So that's very important that you remember it. I have another case where we were doing an interview, and the reporter said, oh, great, thanks, and wrapped it up. And the cameraman started packing up, but my subject matter expert still had a mic on. And then the reporter's like, oh, so do you have any trouble? Or it was something like, how is it working with all the different local agencies that you work with? I actually intervened and said, oh, wasn't there a question that you wanted to ask, and made up something. But the point here is that had she started talking and said something bad about one of the partners that she worked with, that would have been the headline the next day. Even though it looked like the interview was over, she still had a mic on. It was still being recorded. Even if it wasn't being recorded, the reporter could have wrote it down because everything you say to a reporter is on the record. So here's another interview example. We're only going to watch about 5 minutes of it. It goes on for 15 or 20 minutes and it just gets worse. But let's see what he did here.
Okay, and if we could start with you saying and spelling your name and giving me your title too.
Sheriff Joey Terrell, Terrell.
And Sheriff of?
Habersham County.
Excellent. Okay, if you could tell me, Sheriff, just what it is that we're here to clarify. In essence, we've got a baby with a burned out face that looks like at Grady Hospital.
Yes, ma'am.
What led to this unfortunate event?
Our SRT team, which is a team that includes Habersham County Sheriff's Office and Cornelia PD, was serving a warrant for an individual, an Asian individual, for distribution of methamphetamine. In the past experience with the gentleman, he had some weapons charges, and that charge he received was all stemmed from drugs. That's what this is all about, drugs. Due to the nature of his dealings, the information we got from the CI that there was actually some guards standing outside the house when they actually purchased the methamphetamine, we decided to use our SRT team to go in and serve the warrant for our narcotics unit. And when they made entry into the home, there was an obstacle in the doorway. It was dark. Unfortunately, we do not have night vision. That's one thing that our team doesn't have. We're limited funds, being a rural community. But they threw the flashbang in the room, which you're taught just to go 3 to 5 feet inside the room, because of course you don't want to throw it on furniture or get caught up in any kind of drape or anything like that, because it does kind of burn. It gets hot. But unfortunately, there was a pack and play was pushed up against the door, and there was a toddler, a small child, was under 2 years old, inside it, and that's where the flashbang That's what it's technically called. A flashbang landed inside that pack and play with the child.
So the officers and the team, the SRT, made their way through the front door of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Through the house, they get to this bedroom door, and that bedroom door is also locked?
I believe, yes. So you got me off guard there with that one, sorry.
Take your time.
Because I always focus on what happened with the child, because the child was at the very front door. The door where we actually went in when the CI purchased the drugs is the door we entered. So that's why it was unexpected that the child was there.
When you say
But I believe,
CI, what does that mean?
the confidential informant.
Okay.
We used a confidential informant to get into this individual about the drugs, because he was very picky about who he sold to. He actually had lookouts at the driveway leading up to the home. So if it was somebody they didn't know, they would call on the cell phone and tell them, and they wouldn't sell drugs to them. So we tried to get an undercover agent in there, and they wouldn't sell to an undercover agent. So we got a confidential informant who had bought from them in the past that we've got into them to do the buy this time. That's what led us into it, the CI.
The CI, the drug deal was made at the front door of the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Front door of the house. Front door of the house. And that's why we picked that door to enter, because that's where he was selling his drugs out of. So the information was that when he was doing his drug deals, the woman and the children stayed hid in a different part of the house, because they knew that they were selling drugs out of the house. So when the CI done the deal, there was no indication there was children, and there was no clothes, there was no toys, there was nothing to indicate that there was children present in the home. If there had been, then we would have done something different. We never, part of our policy is, if there's children involved when we serve a search warrant, we do not use the flashbang, of course. You know, that's a no-brainer. And we would probably, if we knew they was in that room, we would have picked a different door to home also.
Based then on the information from the CI,
Mm-hmm.
you picked which door to enter into, and also the type of entry that would be made.
Yes, ma'am. Also based on, we've been in the home before because of the prior investigation, where it was related with drugs, where he supposedly pistol whipped a gentleman with a assault rifle, an AK-47. We never recovered an assault rifle. We did recover some other weapons when he was arrested the first time. So that's what led us. And we knew the outlay of the house from the prior time of being in the home, and knew the mother didn't speak a lot of English, and there was no other children involved in the home. And evidently this family moved down from Michigan, and they were family members, and was displaced in Michigan, and they just had moved into the home.
Or Wisconsin, right?
Were displaced out of their home. I believe their home burnt down, which is a tragic incident in itself. And it moved into the home with the mother. And I believe the father of the children was also of the Asian descent, Laotian, I believe, also on that. So,
what are all the relationships then? With this person, Juanes, is the person obviously that you got for the drugs charges, the weapons charges prior.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a male who is then related to this baby and the mother. How?
Through the mother, I believe. I'm not sure the relationship. What little information we got from them was obtained while the baby was being transported, and of course we wanted to.
That's good. Thank you. I would like everybody to go ahead and put something in the chat of what you think did not go well in this interview. There are several things to choose from, so if everybody could just throw something in the chat of something that you identified that did not go well in this interview. Unprepared, yes. He overshared a lot. Lot of jargon. He actually starts using some slang, and that kind of derogatory later on that we didn't get to him. It was a little hard to understand. He was all over the place. Yes, I did not like the part where he was caught off guard and then he laughs about it. The reporter could very well have used this. What we were looking at here is raw footage. It was not the actual report. Too much information. If you were his CI, do you guys feel really good about him right now? Because he all but identified the CI here. Yes, there was a lot of noise. It was probably not a great place, right there in the middle of the station to be doing this. Good job, guys. He shared too much information. If this had been me as a PIO, I would have recommended that it was obviously a very tragic event. I mean, this was a child that was hurt. I would have wanted something very empathetic, that you would share with all those same people at once. I wouldn't want to have to keep sharing this story. So I would have asked him to do a news conference here in this case, where he was able to talk to all the reporters at once and have a prepared statement of what he was going to say. Yeah, I think the CI is in jeopardy because he's shared that and how they use that information. He shared about how they didn't have night goggles. So, he shared about budget information, lots of things that weren't even related to this. I'll talk to you a little bit later about how you need to stay in your lane and stay on topic. He was all over the place. This reporter has so much stuff that they could have used. But yeah, there was a lot of things that he did here. So Linda, if you want to, yeah, no sympathy, like a child was hurt. I'd feel really bad here. So as a spokesperson, it's very important that you have a couple key things under your belt. You need to know your organization's policies, what you can and cannot share. We work for a health department or you volunteer for a health department. So it's very important that you understand HIPAA and what we are allowed to share and what we're not allowed to share. Oftentimes you'll have reporters show up when you're at an event, and if they're getting some kind of medical treatment, like at a clinic where they're getting shots or tests, a reporter cannot film that. And if you should happen to see a reporter that's doing that, you need to go tell the supervisor right away. We did during COVID have reporters that lied and got into our clinics, and we had to have them removed. And there's even a case where I had to call an editor and tell them that if they use those photos, that the Attorney General would be contacting them because they violated somebody's HIPAA rights. So it's very important that you understand that. He clearly did not understand what his policies were for his agency. Most law enforcement in the middle of an investigation would be telling you that they could not release certain information because they were in the middle of investigation. He released things that could very well jeopardize any case they had. You need to understand the big picture. Fortunately or unfortunately, VDH is part of a government agency, so we don't always get to say everything that as freely as we want, because we do report to the governor, and that each governor that we have their own agendas is not the right word. They have their own take on things, and they have their own objectives and goals and things. So we need to make sure that we're falling in line with the governor and what the governor's office would like us to issue as well. We saw a change when we went from Northam to Yunkin on masking. And so it's very important that you are aware of that. There are certain controversial topics that we definitely have a specific script that we follow when we are talking about them, again, for that consistency's sake. And then when we start talking about legislative, we do not interfere with legislation. We're not a legislative agency. We just do what the law tells us to do. So we have to be very careful about commenting on those as well. So it's very important that you stay within your responsibilities. If I have the subject matter expert for flu, and doing an interview on the flu, and then they start asking about measles, that would not be appropriate for that person to keep answering questions about that, because even though you might know a little bit about something else, once you start talking, the reporter's going to ask more questions, and all you knew was that little bit. So you don't want to get stuck in that point where then they're asking you questions and you're like, I don't know the answers now. So it's better for you to just start right there and say, hey, that's not my area of expertise. I can get somebody and we'll get back with you on that, and we'll get the right person to tell you about that. sometimes a reporter will have someone and they're like, I'm just going to ask you all the questions I have that pertain to BDH in general, not just about what I'm here to talk to you about. So it's very important that you try not to that you don't try to answer those questions. You always want to be open and honest within your organization's policies. So that does not mean that if you're calling me to ask me about a pediatric flu death, then I'm going to tell you everything about that poor child that died. Instead, I'm going to tell you what I can tell you. And then I said, this is all the information I can release because of privacy laws. But I'm open and honest with them and tell them this is all I can release. That way they know right away that they can push all they want, but this is as far as I'm going to go. I was open and honest with them on what I'm able to provide them. What do you guys think of when you hear no comment? Just drop it in the chat. Exactly. You guys are right on it. That they're hiding something, that they're guilty, that they're something there's negative that they're trying not to say, that they're lying, they're being evasive, stonewalling. These are all great answers. And that's exactly what they have. And some people say it when they just get stuck. So that's going back to that preparedness. If you're prepared, you should never have to say no comment. So our colleague, again, that was a reporter, she talks about a story. It was an elected official who had done something allegedly unsavory, that she was going to interview them. And it was I can't remember what the case was, but it was something that was basically a one news cycle. Like it would have been talked about and forgotten the next day and moved on. But instead of addressing the issue, and being that open and honest about it, the elected official chose to say no comment. And instead of being a one news cycle story and being done and talked about and moved on, they aired the no comment soundbite at the beginning of every news, like the noon news, the 5 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news for a week. So what could have been handled and addressed by controlling the narrative, instead turned into a story for a week that they talked about. So never ever say no comment. If it's something that you don't know, tell them that you're going to have to get somebody else to come back. If it's a hard question that you know that's about a topic, for instance, in one of our local health districts, they had a series of rabies cases, and one of these cases involved neighborhood cats. Nobody owned these cats. But they just all hung out in the neighborhood, and everybody kind of adopted them to feed them and love on them, but nobody was actually taking care of them and getting them shots. And so when there was a rabid wildlife animal, I think it was a raccoon, in the neighborhood, they had to then round up these cats because they didn't know if the cats had had exposure to them. And one of the tough questions that was being asked is what happens to these cats? If you're familiar with rabies, you can't just test the cat and the cat live. So they did have to euthanize these cats to test them to make sure. And the community was very upset about it. So if you know something like that's going to happen, you need to think about a statement to go with that. And so the health district did come up with a statement that talked about why it was important to make sure and that these cats did not have rabies and how it was going to save the people in the neighborhood from possibly contracting something that is fatal. And that should they want to keep cats, that they needed to make sure that they got vaccinated. And then the last one is be empathetic. A lot of times, especially when you're in a disaster and you're knee deep in, day 10 of 12-hour days, it's easy to forget that we're actually thinking about real people. I know during COVID, we dealt a lot with numbers, and it was 500 this and 600 that or something, but they're all real people behind those numbers, and in those disasters, and it's somebody's wife or father or spouse or child. And so it's always very important. We did not see a lot of empathy from this, the sheriff or the deputy, maybe he's a deputy, the deputy, like here was a child that was injured, but you didn't really get that feeling that, oh my God, this child was saying, and this is what it was unavoidable, but that we feel for this child. You did not get that. Your PIO, if you're ever in that instance where you're going to have to deal with something like that, can help you with empathy statements. Each empathy statement should be unique. We don't do thoughts and prayers. If those became political and no longer have the actual meaning of what was intended behind that. And they sound very false because everybody then said thoughts and prayers. So it's important that each empathy statement be unique. So if you're ever in a position where you're going to be having to talk about somebody that's injured or even a death, we definitely work with your PIO to talk about how you can phrase things to make sure that you're showing empathy. Next slide. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about messages. Okay. So first, you need to know what it is your reporter wants to talk about. So if a reporter says, hey, can we do an interview about Hurricane Helene? Well, there was a lot that happened on Hurricane Helene. So the first thing we're going to do, and it can be your PIO, we'll say, hey, I understand you want to do this article, but tell us a little bit more about what you're looking for. Are you talking about what's going on at the disaster field offices? Are you talking about people that are still without power? Are you talking about the sheltering operations that we have, things like that? So we can narrow down what it is they're going to talk about. And then we want to think about who we're talking to. Is it just the general public? Is it a particular group? Only talking to the people right now that still don't have power? Are we talking about the people that are out there doing cleanup and need shots? Excuse me, that might need a tetanus shot. Who is it that we're talking to? We need to think about that. And then we want to think about anytime you're talking to the media, it's not just about what the media wants, what that reporter wants. It's the message that we want to give out. And what is it that we want to happen from that message? Do we want to educate people? Do we want to persuade them? Go get tested. Do we want them to take action? Here, go to the shelter, get a vaccination. What is it that we want to happen as a result of doing this interview? So anytime there's an interview, it shouldn't just be about what the reporter wants. It should be about what BDH wants their message to be. And that's another good reason why you want to coordinate with your supervisor to figure that out. Is it routine information? Is it just awareness? Hey, hurricane season's coming up. Here's what you should do to be prepared. Or is it in the middle of an emergency? So if you don't have power, here's where the shelters are. Make sure that you bring this, this, and this with you when you come to a shelter. If you don't have power and you're going to use a generator, please make sure that you don't start it up inside your house. Most people die of, fumes and carbon dioxide. So what kind of message is it that you want? Next slide. So then we want to develop your key message. And you guys have been working in the fields a lot. You've done a lot of events and you have a lot of experience. This is not the time to share all of it. Town halls are really good for that when you can discuss a topic at length. But when you're doing an interview, you might talk to a reporter for about 15 minutes. And they're probably going to use about 90 seconds for the entire story. About whatever you talked about, and you will only get a little portion of that. So you have to think ahead of time, what are the most important things that I am going to talk to the reporter about this topic? And we ask that you come up with 3. 3 is a magic number. There are studies upon studies of why 3 is important. It has to do with your memory. You can remember 3 things. Next time you go to the grocery store, put 4 things on your list. I guarantee that you'll come home with at least 3, and there's a good chance that you'll forget the 4th one. There's 3 bears, there's 3, 3 stooges. Things come in 3s when we're taught things as you grow up. Even in COVID, our key message was the 3 W's: wash your hands, wear your mask, watch your distance. They're just that easy to remember. If we'd add a 4th one, it's easier to forget. Don't ask me, but the studies have showed that 3 is the magic number. And it's really all you have time for. So you really want to think about what it is most important that I need to tell the reporter. A lot of times you're going to be talking to reporters that want to know what it's like to be an MRC and what the advantages are and what kind of things you do. So think about the 3 things that you get out of being an MRC the most, or what are the 3 examples of things that you've done, or 3 reasons why you wanted to be a volunteer. So those will help get you there. You want to be clear and concise. Again, 15 minutes of talk, probably a 90-second story, and you probably get, I don't know, 10 seconds of soundbite on that. So you need to narrow it down as long as possible. You guys are all brilliant people in your own fields, but that doesn't mean that this is the time to go on at nauseum about things. So it's just think about how you can break it down to the clearest thing. You want to express it in terms that general audiences can understand. Right now, every time I see it, it goes down a little bit. They're saying that people understand at a 4th grade level for comprehension right now. And just think about the last time you were stressed, and most people are stressed during an emergency or when they're having to get health information. When you're stressed, you also don't retain things. So even if you're a college graduate, a PhD, when you're stressed, you're going to be a lot harder for you to retain everything that you're trying, message that are coming out. And then you want to keep things positive. Even in a disaster or an emergency or a bad situation, you want to come across as positive. You don't want to be like, oh my God, this hurricane is awful. Everybody's just going to die. You don't want to keep it like that. You want to cop up as positive. So we understand that people are dealing with some significant things right now. We have resources for helping you. Here's a shelter, and here's where you can get shots, and here's where you can get bottled water. So you think about how you can phrase things positively. And sometimes it's just a matter of choosing your words. Instead of saying, we don't have any flu clinics scheduled right now, sounds negative, I can say flu clinics are scheduled as needed. So then it means we're ready for you. Just tell us when you have a need. So it comes across a little bit more positive. I'm still saying the same thing, but it comes across more positive. Okay, next slide. We're going to watch another video, and I want you to know if you can tell me what her key message is. We have to change slides here. I don't see the video either. Linda's working on it. And do you need some help?
Linda is muted.
I know. Linda?
There she go.
I see the play button in the middle. You want me to try, Linda?
Yes.
Okay. And stop sharing and I'll try.
Need to select the audio for the sound to come through. Brookie, we don't hear the sound for the video.
Okay, hang on. Let's see. Is there an extra button I need to hit for sound? Share.
Yes, when you go to share your screen, there should be a button at the bottom, right or left, that says share audio.
There we go. Let's try this again. Sorry, guys.
For a trip to a California conference by a troubled North County school district.
A viewer's tip led You Paid For It to investigate the LA trip by the Riverview Gardens School District. Investigator Elliot Davis had to work hard for answers in tonight's You Paid For It.
I set up an appointment to talk to the Riverview Gardens School District Co-Superintendent Rhonda Key about the district's getaway, but she got cold feet after seeing my camera.
Yeah, I'll speak with you alone, not on the camera. I always bring my camera, man.
A viewer tipped me off in an email that Riverview Gardens was spending thousands of dollars to send more than a dozen teachers and administrators to the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development Conference in Los Angeles, California. I wanted to know why the North County School District with so many financial troubles would do that. Getting answers wasn't easy.
What administrators are going on this trip? Sir, a group of teachers are dedicated and willing to go to learn how to teach.
Are any administrators going on this trip?
A group of teachers.
So no administrators are going on this trip?
A group of teachers.
Oh, I know a group of teachers are going, but if you can ask me directly, no administrators are going on this trip?
A group of teachers are going on a professional development, sir.
Who else is going beside the teachers?
A group of teachers and a group of educators. They're all educators, sir.
Who are the teachers and educators? Who are the educators?
A group of teachers.
You said a group of teachers and a group of educators.
Yes,
who are the educators?
A group of teachers, sir.
Riverview Gardens is a struggling school district, both academically and financially. It is only provisional accreditation, so it has to make every dollar count to get back on its feet.
How much is this costing?
A group of teachers are going to a conference.
You said that. How much is it costing taxpayers?
A group of teachers are going on a conference.
How many teachers are going and how much is it costing? Two basic questions.
Mr. Elliott, therefore I'm finished with the interview, and I thank you. Thank you.
But I wasn't finished. I filed a Freedom of Information request to find out about that California trip. Here's what I learned. Riverview Gardens sent 10 teachers and 6 administrators to the Los Angeles conference, a total of 16 people. Taxpayers' tab for all those folks, $30,148.01. But I went one step further and checked with other school districts to see how many folks they flew to the California conference. The Rockwood School District only sent one person, but Parkway didn't send anyone. Neither did Hazelwood, Melville, Francis Howell, Wentzville, or Pattonville. None of those school districts sent anyone. Still, financially pressed Riverview Gardens obviously thought their getaway was a great deal for you. even if Co-Superintendent Rhonda Key wasn't anxious to talk about it.
And why can't you send fewer people?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
But those are, can you answer those questions?
Appreciate it.
Okay, but I still have questions. Can you answer the...
To have your say on this deal, here's a person to call: Riverview Garden School District Co-Superintendent Rhonda Key. And here's the number: area code 314-869-2505. Or if you missed a number, go to our website, myfoxstl.com, and click on the news tab. Tell her what you think. After all, you paid for it.
In front. So what do you guys think of the school system? Do you think that they spent, that they were good stewards of the city's money? Drop in the chat. Do you think that this was a good stewards of the city's money? No, no, no. Okay, so what was her key message though? Group of teachers. That's right. Her key message, she stuck to it. If she did anything right, she stuck to her key message. But Linda, you can go ahead and start sharing again. Yeah, she obviously knew the interview was coming. He said that she had invited her, but she obviously didn't like it. So now what if I told you that this school was unaccredited, but this conference was specifically for helping schools that are unaccredited get back to the point where they could get an accreditation, and that by sending some of these administrators, they were department heads, and that they would actually share the information with multiple teachers when they came back. So 5 administrators might actually be able to share this information with 50 other teachers, and that this would help them get back to accreditation, and which it would be why other schools didn't need to go. And that they sent 16 individuals, but at 30,000, that was really only $2,000 a person. You can't really travel very far for that anyway. How do you feel about that now? It's more positive. That's right. So this is a chance where she knew this was going to be a hard question. And I honestly don't know if they were off on a joyride or if this was a legitimate trip or not. I do not know. But if she had known that, she's obviously knew he was coming. She knew that there was going to be a hard question. Why were they sending 16 people and spending this money when they weren't financially sound? She needed to have an answer ready. So that is very important. And again, why you want to bring in your PIO, because we understand what a reporter is and what their type of reporter they are and what they're going to push for. And we already know if a topic's going to be a hot topic. So there's definitely a lot of prep work that could have gone in this that could have made this go a different way. Another thing I want to point out is, remember how I told you to be open and honest? Was she open and honest? Yeah, she wasn't honest. And I don't know if a virtual meeting could have worked either, but that's a good point. She wasn't. But here's the thing, that information is public knowledge. That's FOIA. And so if you have something that's FOIA, a reporter can easily go, or anybody in the public can go out and get it. So she wasn't actually hiding anything by not replying, because he was able to go get it. And what did he do as a little, push back at her for not cooperating and making him do the extra work? He put her phone number right up there for people to call. So there, when you're not cooperative with a reporter, it can really come back and haunt you. So rather than being able to control the narrative and explain what they were doing, she took the opportunity to be rude to him, not show him any information or share any information. And that's the kind of story she got. So again, it's very important to know what's going. So that's why you want to have your message ready. And when you're preparing your message, I told you to have those 3 key items, but you want to think about the 5 W's, because that's what a reporter is going to ask you about. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. We've heard those all our lives from school, but who was involved? Who caused it? They would like to know fault. Make sure that we're not pointing fault, especially at our partners too. So we can, again, control that narrative and work on our phrasing so that we don't point fingers, but we do acknowledge that something was at fault. Who is in charge? You really just want to know that somebody's in charge and going to be taking care of it. Sometimes BDH is aware of the situation and we are working on it. It goes a long way, especially in the beginning of a disaster. Nobody's sure of anything, but if you at least let people know that there's somebody in charge and they're working on it, it goes a long way. They want to know what happened. They weren't there. What happened? Why? We had that South Hill fire this summer. Why was there a fire? What happened? What are we doing to fix it? When will things take place? If you're going to have a clinic or if you're going to have a shelter open, where will it be? When will it be? Where they can get more information. It's always important that no matter what your topic is, that you have a place for them to go for information. Have a phone number handy, a website, someone to call, something like that where they can go information. Maybe they go to the library if it's a disaster. Maybe if you stop by this disaster field office, that's where you can get some more information. So remember these questions. And so when you're thinking of your messaging and what's important, think about what will cover these questions. Next slide. When you're developing your key messages, you don't want to overshare. We don't want to promise people everything's going to be all right. So as a spokesperson, you have to have credibility. So if you say something and then it doesn't happen, or then you lose your credibility. So you don't want to promise people it'll be all right when you don't actually know that it will. You can say that BDH is going to do everything we can to help people in whatever incident it is. Acknowledge fear and uncertainty. In a disaster, everybody's scared. Come on, think back to COVID. We were all scared. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know what happened. Just acknowledge it. That goes back to that empathy. We understand that this is a difficult situation. Here's what I can tell you right now. Open and honest, but you acknowledge that there's things going. We talked about having that process in place. We were aware of the situation. We were investigating. People want to help. Give them things to do. Go for more information. Tell them what not to do too if it's important. Like at South Hill Fire, we really needed people not to go to that area because there was a fire. Tell people what it is you want them to do or where they can go for information. If they feel like they have a role, then that helps alleviate some of that certainty and fear. Have supporting data available. It may not want to be one of your 3 key messages, but in case the reporter asks, you have it ready, rather than saying, I don't know how many people died of fentanyl this year. Know how many, if that's what your interview is, you have that already. And then next steps. So what happens now? I just worked on the Richmond water situation. The report just came out. So that's everybody's question now is, BDH's investigation came out. So what does that mean now? What happens now? So do that. What you don't want to do is get caught up in predictive questions or scenarios. So if on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. someone's standing at a bus stop and somebody drives by with measles, will they get it? Because no matter what they have, it's going to be that they have someone that says it probably happened or something like that. So if you say, no, there's no way, they'll be like, but so-and-so, caller number 22 said that that's how they got measles. So you don't want to get caught up in things like that because you never know where they're going to get the scenario. My steady answer is I can't comment on individual cases. What I can tell you is this is how measles spreads. So you stick to your facts. Always stick to your facts and don't do that. I just used what we call a transitional phrase. I can't tell you that, but this is what I can tell you. What most important is, what is the focus is, that speaks to a larger point. Your homework is the next time you watch a news conference, When the people are at the podium, especially when you can hear the reporter ask the question. I want you to listen really closely to find out how many times the reporter asks the question and the person at the podium actually answers the question. Instead, you'll find that they're going to use a lot of these to go back to whatever their key message is. So just because a reporter asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it. So you have your key messages, and that's what's important to you as a representative of VDH to get out. And that's what you're going to do that. And you use these phrases to bring it back. So if I'm doing a report or an interview on sheltering and they ask me, so when is people's electricity going to come back? I have no idea on that. Even the electric company probably doesn't have an idea. And what I can say is what's most important now to know now is that we do have the shelter open so that people without electricity can come and feel safe. So I bring it back to my key point. So there's lots of these, you can practice with them, but watch a news conference. I guarantee you'll hear at least one of these in a news conference. And this is just I think it's our last slide. So it's gonna we're gonna try and do these one at a time. Stick to a key message. Is this something we do or is it something we avoid? Throw it up in the chat. Yeah, good job. These are all do's. Okay, next one. Keep comments simple. Do or avoid. Again, yep, absolutely. We're going to do that one. No comment. Good job. That's an avoid. Stick with the facts. Good job. That's a do. Jargon. Do we want to use jargon? Absolutely. Avoid. Be direct and concise. Okay, and that goes into the do column. Be conversational. We got a little mixed ones on that. You actually do want to sound conversational. And by that, I mean, I want to have an interview where we feel like we're having a conversation versus measles is measles is a disease that can spread rapidly. You don't want to get measles and you can prevent it by getting a shot. This is not conversational. Yeah, you want to avoid sounding scripted and sounding robotic. You do want to have your own little script or at least bullet points to do that. We have something called a message map, and when you take the spokesperson training, we'll teach you how to use that to develop your message so that you have something to have in the background to keep you on track, but that you don't read from. Okay, the next one, acronyms. Do I want to say VDH and STEC and MMR vaccine? Yeah, you want to avoid those. Even if you know what they are, doesn't mean anybody. Slang. I have teenagers. They're teaching me all kinds of cool slang, but it's probably not the time for me to say, hey, this situation is so sus. So it's an avoid. Do we have any more? Yeah. Do we want to use we or do we want to use I when we talk? It's going to be we because you are representing VDH as a whole. So then you have the power of the agency behind us. Do we want to speculate? Yes, the royal we. That's right. We don't want to speculate at all. And correct errors. So what happens if I'm giving an error in an interview and I say, oh, there are 10,000 without power. I mean, there are 1,000 without power. You just go right ahead and correct yourself. If it's being taped, I always just stop and say, hey, I got that number wrong. Can you ask me that question again and let me go at it? If you actually do a story, hang on, can you hold on that one, Linda? If you actually tell a story or have a story and it gets to publication and you find that there's an error, whether they misunderstood you or you accidentally said something wrong, talk to your PIO right away and we'll get it fixed. Be credible. So a good way to do that is using qualifiers. And so way I can do that is at this time, we have X amount of people without power. Right now, there are 44 people that are homeless or have houses destroyed currently. And if you use those words, those qualifiers, that way when something changes, you don't lose credibility. You still have your credibility because at that time you were the correct number. But things change rapidly in a disaster, and that's a way to say that. Is that our last one? Opinions. Should we share our opinions? Absolutely not. I don't know about any of you guys, but I have lots of opinions. But when I'm talking to the media as a representative of VDH, is not the time to share them. Okay, that is our last one. Our last slide. I will hang out here to answer questions if anybody wants to throw them up. And Linda, if you could put the train information for the spokesperson training. So if anybody wants to take that, they can. She'll put that in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brookie and Linda. This was really great information. I was lucky enough to take the full spokesperson training a few weeks ago at the summit, and it was really, really, really good. Terrifying at the end because they make you do an interview, but it was really good.
But you feel more comfortable now having done that exercise, don't you?
100%, absolutely.
And that's why we make everybody do that before we let you live in front of a reporter. It's good practice.
So to get your credit for the course, just go back to train and click the little survey thingy, and then you will get credit in train, and then that will also pull into your VBHS account. So if you have any issues with that, you should all have my email address because it's on the alert for this. So just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that we get that worked out for you. Also, thank you so much to Adrenia for driving, as always. We appreciate you.